Welcome back, focused learners. Let's get right into it today. We're tackling a subject that literally touches millions of lives, but we're going to break down some incredibly counterintuitive insights on cognitive decline. We'll be walking through a fascinating explainer today, covering the silent, early symptoms of dementia, and honestly, more importantly, the highly actionable steps you can take for prevention. If you've ever worried about your memory, or maybe the memory of someone you love, you're definitely going to want to stick around for the biology and the dietary interventions we're mapping out for you today. To kick things off, there's this rather amusing but deeply revealing clinical anecdote from our source material. A doctor recounts this story of a couple coming into the clinic, right? And when the doctor asks the husband when he first actually noticed his cognitive decline, the husband just deadpans, "I think it was when my wife started to diagnose me." The doctor noticed that every single time the husband stumbled on a word or a memory, the wife was instantly there, quick to correct him. And the source makes a brilliant point here. Constantly reminding someone of their cognitive mistakes actually locks those mistakes in. It creates this vicious cycle of anxiety and failure. So the doctor gave them an experiment. For one whole week, the wife was to stop correcting him entirely. And get this, the result of that 1 week break? The husband returned articulate, sharp, and seemingly completely free of cognitive dysfunction. This brings us to an absolutely crucial warning from the source about the false alarm trap. True dementia is a physical, biological decline, but things like temporary stress, massive blood sugar spikes, or just a really severe lack of sleep can perfectly mimic the exact symptoms of dementia. Before jumping to a life-altering conclusion, it's vital to recognize that temporary lifestyle factors might actually be the real culprit. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our structured roadmap for the rest of the explainer. First, the biology of decline. Second, 6 warning signs. And third, actionable steps for prevention. Starting right off with Section 1, the biology of decline. Let's look at the physical reality of what is actually happening inside the brain when true mental decline begins. According to the source material, true dementia isn't just forgetfulness. It's a physical decline where specific parts of your brain are quite literally atrophying, meaning they're shrinking. The primary structure affected early on is called the hippocampus. You can think of the hippocampus as the brain's memory center, kind of like your internal GPS. When this specific physical structure begins to shrink, well, that's when the biological root causes of our upcoming symptoms are triggered. Which brings us right into Section 2, the 6 warning signs. Now, before we jump into the list, the source imparts a quick reminder that these are early indicators. Experiencing these occasionally does not guarantee a dementia diagnosis, okay? With that in mind, the first 2 early markers of decline are difficulty organizing tasks, usually coupled with sudden changes in personality. Now, sure, a sudden lack of organization or a weird mood shift can happen for any number of reasons. Like we mentioned earlier, just bad sleep. But when they become chronic, they're key early markers that the brain is really struggling to maintain its executive functions. Now, what's really interesting about this is warning sign number 3, constipation. I know, you might be wondering, what on earth does digestion have to do with dementia? Well, the source highlights the profound connection between the gut and the brain, literally calling the gut a second brain. You actually have more nerve fibers in your digestive system than in your spinal column. The microbiome in your gut produces a massive amount of neurotransmitters. In fact, those gut microbes produce way more serotonin than your actual brain does. This is exactly why people with neurodegenerative issues like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's have a significantly higher incidence of constipation. The 2 systems are deeply physically linked. Moving on to sign number 4, sensory dysfunction. As the brain begins to lose its ability to focus and concentrate, this can actually manifest as an issue with your physical senses. You might notice totally unexplainable changes in your sense of smell, taste, hearing, or even eyesight. It can even mess with your appetite. General sensory issues can be a very subtle early signal that the brain's processing centers are beginning to wane. Then we have sign number 5, and honestly, this is one of the most visible and deeply frustrating ones: language problems. This happens directly because of that hippocampal shrinkage we talked about earlier. A person might try to find words, repeat things over and over, or just totally mix up their vocabulary. In some cases, a person is fully able to form sentences, but what actually comes out of their mouth is entirely incoherent and random. The real tragedy here is that the person is actively trying to communicate a clear thought, but their shrinking hippocampus is basically scrambling the output. And that leads us to the 6th and final warning sign, the loss of your internal GPS, leading to a complete inability to navigate new places. If you drive to a new location to find a store and get completely, hopelessly lost, that could be a major red flag. Remember, the hippocampus acts as the brain's spatial mapping area. When it starts to fail, your internal map becomes dysfunctional, and you quite literally lose your place in space. All right, let's pivot to the final and most important part, Section 3, Steps for Prevention. So the crucial point is, how do we actually stop this physical decline? The source argues a really fascinating point. Conventional medicine often entirely ignores the profound impact of dietary interventions. For example, what causes the hippocampus to shrink in the first place? Well, one of the most common causes is a severe deficiency in vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. And how do we become deficient? The source explains that a high carbohydrate diet or heavy alcohol consumption actively, aggressively depletes B1. The more sugar and carbs you eat, the more B1 your body demands just to metabolize them. So the first actionable step is to correct this by taking unfortified nutritional yeast, which is just a fantastic natural source of vitamin B1, while simultaneously cutting way back on alcohol and refined carbs. Step 2 brings us right back to the gut. We need to increase the diversity of our microbiome to fight the gut inflammation that is constantly seen in dementia patients. One highly counterintuitive way to do this is through fasting. You might ask, wait, does starving my microbes actually make them weaker? The source notes that the exact opposite is true. Fasting triggers this ancient survival mechanism. It actually strengthens your microbiome, allowing completely new, robust strains of bacteria to emerge and thrive. And this brilliantly illustrates the need to protect the bidirectional communication between your gut and your brain, which runs via the vagus nerve. The source claims that going on a low-carb, no-grain diet, and specifically avoiding gluten, can yield massive cognitive improvements. Furthermore, it explicitly warns against GMO foods sprayed with glyphosate. Glyphosate is an herbicide that works by literally destroying microorganisms in the soil. Well, think about it. When you ingest it, it does the exact same thing to the vital microbes in your gut, effectively cutting off that healthy communication to your brain. Moving right along, steps 3 and 4 involve some incredibly powerful dietary additions. First up, eating broccoli sprouts. These tiny little seeds absolutely burst with a phytonutrient called sulforaphane, which acts as a superfood for the brain and is incredibly effective at healing the leaky gut so often found in Alzheimer's patients. Step 4 is feeding your brain ketones. Look, if your brain's neurons are damaged and can't uptake glucose, they are essentially starving to death. By using intermittent fasting and consuming MCT oil, you naturally generate ketones. Ketones can actually bypass the cellular damage and feed those starving brain cells directly, allowing them to wake up and thrive once again. Let's move to steps 5 and 6 and see how this builds with specific neuroprotective supplements. The source highlights 2 incredibly potent natural elements. First is ginkgo biloba, specifically the extract EGB761. Research shows this provides significant physical protection to the brain's neural pathways. The second is lion's mane mushroom, which has just off-the-charts research backing its ability to radically impact and protect your overall cognitive function. Okay, let's pull this all together into a final summary so you can really absorb these 7 actionable steps. To protect your hippocampus and your long-term cognitive future, number 1, fix a B1 deficiency with nutritional yeast. Number 2, heal your gut through fasting and absolutely avoiding gluten and glyphosate. Number 3, eat those broccoli sprouts for the sulforaphane. Number 4, use ketones via MCT oil and fasting to bypass damaged neurons. Number 5, leverage ginkgo biloba extract. Number 6, incorporate lion's mane mushroom. And finally, number 7, please don't forget the lifestyle basics: omega-3 DHA from fatty fish, vitamin D, zinc, deep sleep to lower your cortisol, and get some exercise to flood your brain with the oxygen it desperately needs. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought-provoking question. Is your brain actually getting the fuel it needs, or just the food you crave? We've learned today that cognitive decline isn't just some inevitable mystery. It is deeply, deeply tied to the biological fuel we provide our bodies every single day. By recognizing those early warning signs and taking structured, actionable steps to heal our gut and nourish our hippocampus, we hold immense power over our own cognitive longevity. Thank you so much for joining me today, Focus Learners. Stay curious, keep feeding your brain the good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.